Welcome to Reread. Today it's time to go through Book 3 of the Brian Daley Han Solo trilogy, Han Solo and the Lost Legacy. Look at that cover, isn't it beautiful? This one is where they basically are going to find the lost treasure vaults of Zim the Despot. There's a beautiful history with Zim that Brian Daley fleshes out, and Jason Fry will later do that in Guide to Warfare, which if you haven't read that one is well worth your time. But it's a legend that this treasure was in these vaults. They're heavily guarded. It's been a secret, but now they know the location and they're on the way to hunt for treasure. There is several people here. Bandor, which is an old friend of Han's. Hasty is the femme fatale here, or Hasty. I don't know how you pronounce her name actually. And then Skintz. He's like the archaeologist. He's the one that can read the runes and understand the legend. He works for a university, I believe. He's the academic. And he's some sort of and I can't remember how he was described, but he's obviously tiny and what I think is insectoid. He has several different appendages, it says. And when he was first introduced, I'm sure Brian Daley described him. I just don't recall. I just know he's small and kind of like insect-like. But other than that, they're all great characters and they're all in this big adventure. There is a ton of action in this, especially toward the second half, where they encounter what's called the survivors. Those are Zim's disciples, you know, a cult basically. And honestly, half the book is them fighting and blowing their way through them. Now, remember I told you about that comic book, the Hollow Moons, Han Solo and the Hollow Moons of Korra, where Chewbacca left Han because he was too reckless. Well, Chewbacca does some crazy stuff to get him out of, crossfire and attacks from the survivors. And Han goes, Chewie, you are incredible. Chewie, you are insane sometimes. And Chewbacca's laughing as blaster fire is going everywhere. Yeah, so again, that comic book had no idea what Han and Chewie's relationship was. In fact, I wrote this down because it says, when it started getting hot and everything, Han would have, if Han was Chewie, Chewie should have just turned and ran. He said, but the Wookiee code of ethics left no room for desertion. Because a life debt's a life debt. You just don't leave your best friend when times get tough. Now, they're talking about, when you have a chance of dying. But again, that comic book was just such a farce compared to what Brian Daley's putting out here. There are some comedic moments very early that Han and Chewie are always doing something at the beginning that has nothing to do with the overall story. And in this one, I can't remember exactly what it was now, but I remember Chewie had to become the captain, pretend to become the captain. He has this like a shirt and everything, and Han Solo's reporting to Captain Chewbacca and everything, and they had to switch the roles for some reason, but it's really funny. Han and Chewie having a lot of fun. Of course, Bullocks and Blue Max are in this, and I had forgotten about this, but all of them, Bullocks, Blue Max, Hasty, Bandor, are all offered jobs by Skintz at the end. That's why, because I couldn't remember what happened to Bullocks and Blue Max. But they'd all been offered jobs at the university at the end of this, which is why they left. And again, I just totally forgot about that, I guess. But Galandro is in this. He is kind of pursuing Han, looking for their final duel. When they do have the duel, I remember this, Galandro is way too fast. Han has his blaster out, but shoots the ground. He can't lift his arm all the way up until Galandro gets two shots on Han, one in the shoulder and one in the forearm. And, is not going to kill Han, but it's going to capture him and turn him into the authorities. He said, you're a worthy opponent. He said, no one's been that fast of a draw. No one's been able to get their gun out of their holster on me before. You did that, so congratulations. So Galandro by far is the more superior. But when he's going to hunt down and kill Skintz, basically Zim's defensive mechanism turns on. I remember this, and just shoots him to death. He's just like a charred pulp of remains there. And of course, this will come back to haunt Han like 20-something years later. But when his daughter comes looking, when Galandro's daughter comes looking for him. But other than that, it's definitely fun. Now, that happens toward the end, too, and I didn't realize that. I thought it was, I knew it was toward the end, but I'm talking like the last 10 pages. And I thought it was the last 30 pages was the showdown with Galandro. So, but even though the whole book is like 185 pages, but there's a lot packed in here. A lot. No time is wasted on this. And like I said, a lot of action. This one has the most action of probably any of his books. And it's the exciting conclusion, right? But when they find Zim's treasure, and I do remember this, it turns out to be these crystals which used to be very precious and expensive back in the day. But now they're very common because there's a different metal or source that they use that's much better. And so it's basically just worthless treasure. There's a few things, some artifacts, some recordings, some, artwork that may be good for them to pawn off. But other than that, meh, there's nothing here for them. Enough to repair the Falcon and move on. And at the end, Han says, well, let's see if we can start doing some more Kessel runs with Jabba the Hutt. Because he worked with Jabba. Again, this ties perfectly in with A.C. Crispin's book, where he's been working for Jabba, making the Kessel run and everything, and so he's just going to go back to work there. All right, now again, A.C. Crispin's book had not been written now, but it fits flawlessly in there. You're like, oh yeah, because I've already read about that. So again, good job to A.C. Crispin. As a whole, Brian Daley's Han Solo trilogy, I still feel is superior to A.C. Crispin's. I love A.C. Crispin's Han Solo trilogy, but Brian Daley just has a certain, weight to it. I don't know if that even makes sense though. Bullocks and Blue Max are among my favorite droids. That was solidified here by rereading these. I love them. There's not as much humor with them in this one because of all the action, but they still have a lot to do. And though of all the characters from Brian Daley, I wish Bullocks and Blue Max would have been able to come back into the expanded universe. But it wasn't meant to be. All right, folks, that's it for now. See you next time.